Good evening and welcome. I am Phyllis Logan, your host for the Chicago Westside branch, NAACP. We are a live interactive talk show. We've got about 25 minutes or so to speak with you. Call in, feel free to call in 312-738-1060. Tonight is going to be a little bit of a smorgasbord. Uh, the NAACP, we get invited to many roundtable discussions. And there's so much going on, so much is happening in Chicago throughout Cook County as well as the state of Illinois. And, being brought into roundtable discussions on issues that affect our communities, our families, speaks to the heart. So, here this evening, we want to speak in reference to two things. We were brought in to have a discussion on hate crimes. And what I got out of the discussions, yes, hate crimes are happening, have always been out there, but the crime that I want to speak to first, and I really need to hear from you, the community, 312-738-1060. What are your thoughts? What are some solutions? What can we do to help each other? The violence that's going on in Chicago right now is truly disturbing. It has reached unprecedented numbers, the number of people who have been killed this year by the hands of guns. And most of the violence is happening in our community. So when we had the roundtable discussions this week on hate crimes, it brought me full circle to say, is this hate crime right here in our own communities against each other? It's always been pictured as black on black crime. So why is black on black crime so hyped up in the past year or two? What's going on? How do we change this? I mean, what's going on? How can we help each other change the dynamics of what's going on? How can we stop the black on black crime, which could be categorized as black on black hate crimes? I want to see it in that prism. Black on black crime as a hate crime. I don't know. You told me differently. 312-738-1060. Because something is wrong. Not only are we losing our young adults who have so much potential in life, who could start on the turn of a dime, so to speak, and change their lives, but the destruction is now reaching our elders and now our babies. And when babies are getting shot just for mere ignorance or black on black crime, then something needs to be said as well as done. And we know our elected officials have been going throughout Chicago on a regular basis, throughout Cook County, having these community talk sessions. And they want to hear the elected officials. They want to hear who can help us solve these issues that are within our community. I mean, we've grown to a deaf tone that when we hear the police sirens going through our neighborhoods, we figure it's a normal thing. It is not normal. When we hear the ambulance going through our neighborhoods after 10 p.m., we have an issue. Something needs to be done. 312-738-1060. We have a caller. Caller, your question or comment, please.
Okay, it's good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Brother Azania. Uh, and my response to the fact of how can we stop this critical situation of this black on black crime, one thing we should know, we should understand that America, the United Snakes, is a place of our captivity, where we were brought here as captives in this land. And This is a curse in our land. So one thing that I know that we got to change the idea. The idea is we continue to try to push one and gravitate to what the European expects of us. We got to change the idea. As long as we keep the same idea, we're going to keep doing the same old thing. Because that's what he wants to do, is destroy ourselves. So we got to change the idea and gravitate more to life.
Thank you, caller. But our question is not so much as changing, because we can all hear about how we got here as black people, how we've been used and abused as a black civilization, how we were slaves, that means that mindset, how we've gone through Jim Crow, how we've prevailed through so many things. We now have had a black president, so we've broke through that ceiling. But how is it that in this day and age, my kids, well, I may have taught my kids who are now adults about our history, but so many kids don't know about our history as it relates to slavery. So how do they get into the mindset when we see 15, 13, 14, 15, 16-year-olds behind the barrel of a gun doing the destruction in our community? For what purpose? I mean, who's at fault here? We got to talk about who's at fault before we can talk about how to change it. And I cannot say 50 years ago, if I'm only 20 or 15, that's the reason and rhyme and reason why I have a gun in my hand. We've got to come up with why things are happening in today's generation. Today's generation has no clue of slavery. Matter of fact, if you ask them who was the president before Obama, they possibly could not tell you. So that's how much far back they go into history. Possibly, if you ask them who was the last leader of a gang, they may know that. I don't know. But we've got to come up with some solutions. And I don't want to say who's to blame, but it needs to stop. So give us a call, 312-738-1060. I'm just, it is, when we talk about hate crime, so hate crime is picking up, part of the conversation today, this week rather, in the roundtable discussions that we've had. The NAACP as well as a few other groups, groups such as the handicap community, those that are disabled who really cannot with a full faculty defend themselves. Hate crimes are creeping up against them, knowing that they cannot defend themselves for whatever their physical incapacities are. That right there is just hate on someone who is totally defenseless. And then you have groups that are being called out because they are foreigners. You have groups that, for those that are from the Hispanic community, they're being hated on by people who, because of all of the rhetoric within our politics, calling them illegal and all sorts of derogatory names, they're being hated up on for whatever reasons. And then you have the gay and lesbian community being hated on for no apparent reason other than for who they are. I mean, those are hate crimes based on someone's dislike of another group. But within the black community, who are we blaming? Who's at fault for coming in and creating all of this havoc in our communities? It's black on black. Who's to train? Who's to educate? Who's to inform? Who's to bring this to a stop? Is it our government? Is it a government problem? I think that's what we want to know. Does the government come in? When I talk about government, I'm talking about the military. Do we bring in the militia? Do we bring in the government to come in to lock us all down, put us on curfew, to go in and knock our doors down to see who's behind it, see if there's weapons of mass destruction or whatever, do we blame the government? 312-738-1060. Give me a call. Let me know your thought. Do we blame our elected officials? I don't know. We've got a caller. Caller, let's hear your question or comment. Yes, caller.
Hi, I'm calling because I just found out via my social media that there is a network that is going to be airing a show about the Ku Klux Klan. I don't know the in-depth about what the show will be about. I think it's just to give a idea into what it's like or something like that. Do you think that something like that is normalizing something like an organization like the Ku Klux Klan?
I hear you, and I did hear that as well, caller. Thank you very much. That was disturbing to me personally, and from an NAACP perspective, we're nonpartisan, but at the same token, the same way that we look for people to respect our words, our actions, we have to we have to do the same. There's the one piece of the Constitution that says, you have a freedom of speech, and it depends on how that show, I think, affects people. But at the same token, we're given a choice to voice our opinion and not watch it. I think many times what we try to do when we don't like something as a group or individual, we don't cater to them. We don't patronize them. So, if they get their ratings from people who think like them, then that's their voice. We can't do anything about that. And there's so many shows that come on television that speak to so many ill wills that you have to have an open mind and let everyone have a freedom of speech. There's nothing we can do about the Second Amendment, which gives you the freedom of speech. So thank you, caller, for that. And hopefully we will have an open mind to those topics when they do, if they rile us up to a point where it creates more hatred, hate crime, so to speak. We have another caller. Caller, your question or comment.
Yes, good evening. I just like to make a comment
Hmm?
about we need, as adults, we need to stop doing all this stuff that they're doing. We need to understand what leadership role are we taking and giving and showing our kids. Because number one, I bet you right now during this Christmas time, the kids are not going out and buying toy guns. I bet there's many parents, many relatives that's going out buying kids guns. Then when we look at television, we only see emanations of killing and hatred and things. So see, everything cannot be blamed on the kids. Then when we start closing schools,
Mhm.
this is another evidence. Our kids need to see a school in their neighborhood where they live at, on their block, on their street, open and not closing. We're setting bad precedents.
Well, thank you.
Westside, thank you so much, and you keep up your good work. Thank you much.
Appreciate it. So on a comment to the caller's comment, uh, we have adults. You know, uh, we don't want to say that the kids are at fault. As the caller just stated, there are people over the kids, which are labeled the adults. Where does the responsibility lie to who is to blame for all of the things that have happened? It takes adults in leadership and the elected officials, number one, to shut down schools. But it takes the parents of the kids to say to the elected officials, don't shut down this school. So if I'm going to protest something that affects my family in a harsh way, then it's up to me, the adult of the child, to voice my opinion on what's good for my child and what's not, especially if you are a taxpayer. people who own properties, I mean, we hear the concerns all the time, property taxes are going up. Property taxes pay for something. The bulk of property taxes pay for our school systems. So if you're paying for those school doors to be open in your community and they close those school doors, then, I would be one to argue with the tax collector to say, reduce my taxes because you've taken away the school. But as a parent of a child who I am comfortable, I moved in this neighborhood, I want them to be able to walk no more than 4 blocks to school. To the parent who allows that school to close with no voice opposing the closing of that school, then that there's an issue with that right there. So, 312-738-1060. Once again, who's at fault here? What's going to work? What's going to make this work when we're now trying to battle hate crimes, when we actually have black on black hate crime every day? And, when it was noted that last weekend it was below zero, we still had people being shot in their homes, shot on the streets for no reason. And we have to really think hard about how we are listening to our, not just our elected officials, but the police. When the police say that we cannot find the suspect, this is disturbing to me. There was an incident that happened a couple of weeks ago out in the far suburban communities. Within a matter of a couple of days, the suspect was found. But here we are in Chicago, and the territory's not that big. Most times, the offenses that happen in our neighborhoods happen with someone who is familiar with the territory within our community. For police to say day after day after day that they cannot find a suspect for a deadly crime within our neighborhood, I have an issue with that. You should have an issue with that as well. Our crimes go unsolved, but in other communities, they can solve these crimes in 3 and 4 days. Have a person arrested and they're going to trial and then they're convicted and then they're doing time. Why don't we receive the same type of solving of these issues, the same type of production of solving crimes in our communities as they do in the suburban communities? I have another issue with the South Side. Inglewood being so blighted. You can drive through Inglewood and see land as though you were out on a clear cornfield. You can see one house, one home on a block, 1 or 2 homes on a block, and a crime occurs 3 or 4 blocks away from a blighted community, a blighted block, a square block. Someone who's doing that crime lives in that community. Whose job is it to say, officer, they're over there? Whose job is that? I don't understand this. 312-738-1060. Audience, help me out here. Help us to be able to put some substance to this issue. And here we are at the end of 2016, and the crime that's happening right now, it feels like it's 1960 something. People are just out there with nothing else to do. Something's wrong. And we have to be the concerned citizens. We have to be the ones to help solve this problem. Otherwise, there was another report just yesterday. The state of Illinois has population has been reduced by 37,000 people. Where did they go? I'm hoping that, they moved away. But I'm hoping that they moved away with a sense of wanting to be responsible citizens wherever they move to. If they move to the South, then that's a good thing. Maybe they can be a broader voice in the southern states. But if our population decreases, a whole lot of other things go with that. So we have school closing. Schools are closed. We have many families who have lost their homes. So we reduce the tax base for the community. So the income for any programs are reduced. And then on top of that, you have the crime, which increases the cost of the police force. There goes a higher bill for that. And it's just like your own home's budget. You know how much is coming in. You know how much has to go out. Eventually, the city gets into the same type of scenario that a family who's underwater gets to be, having more expense than the income it receives. Then they have to do a process of elimination on what's priority and what's not. We lose a lot of social services. I mean, you've got food banks that are being unfilled. They can't stock the shelves long enough or good enough to continue to feed the homeless and those that are less fortunate. You have the shelters being closed down because they don't have a support system either with additional funding that would come from the city. What happens when you have a population of people that are needing of services that your city cannot provide? We have got to change this mindset that we're in right now, and I'm hoping that we resolve this before this year is out. The black on black crime has to stop. Otherwise, we give the hate crime voices out there more reason to do more damage than we're doing to ourselves. Who will protect our communities if we cannot protect our communities? I don't know who would be our backup if we needed help when we've got the black on black crime and then that hate crime happening at the same time. They have to call in the military forces to clean this up. And that is not what we want to see. We had the military come into Chicago in 1968 when they assassinated Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. They put us on curfew. That's how long it's been since Chicago has been that devastated by crime, whether it's hate crime, destruction of other people's properties, whatever. We have gotten ourselves into a dilemma here that it's going to take all of us as a community to solve this concern that is affecting all of us. My property is no more valuable than yours if we're living in the same crime-infested environment. This year, we have got to end this because next year, under a new administration, a new federal administration that sends dollars to our states, and dollars that we don't have enough already to provide for those that are least fortunate, we're going to have a bigger problem in 2016. We have got to solve these issues now. We've got to hold our elected officials accountable, and those that have a voice, 18 years and older, you have got to be responsible for the outcome and the protection of your community. I am Phyllis Logan, your host, and I will see you next weekend. But this week was so filled with so many things that were just all about destruction, and it's unfortunate. But CAN TV has provided us with a platform that we can speak with you on, and we just want to invite you to our organization, the Chicago Westside Branch NAACP. Our phone number, if you have any questions, further comments, 773-261-5890. I am Phyllis Logan, your host. I will see you next Thursday at 6 p.m. Have a good evening. Have a good weekend. Have a good holiday. Thank you.